Hi Sharon.
Hi Tracy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. You?
Yes, thanks.
How's it going?
Okay, on the agenda today, we're going to have an introduction to the AMRC Northwest and an update of where we're up to. Ian's going to run through some technology assist that we've got on offer for SMEs. He's also going to talk to you about adopting the technology for resilience. I'm going to come back and talk to you about a piece of work that we did with our colleagues in Wales, the AMRC Wales, and then we've got a Q&A session. In the middle of all of this, we do have some interactive bits as well, so you're not going to be talked to death, hopefully. So, the AMRC Northwest, why are we here? Where did we come from? Well, the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre was established in 2001 in Sheffield, and that was a collaboration between Boeing and Sheffield University. We're part of the high-value manufacturing Catapult, and we're one of the 7 centres located throughout the UK. We help manufacturers of any size to become more competitive by introducing advanced technologies, techniques and processes. The AMRC specialises in carrying out world-leading research into advanced machining, manufacturing and materials, all applicable to industry. We have expertise in machining, automation, robotics, digitally assisted assembly, castings, additive manufacturing, composites, designing for manufacturing, testing and training. The group consists of 700 advanced manufacturing researchers working in centres in Sheffield, North Wales, Derby, and obviously now AMRC in Preston. The AMRC Northwest was established in June 2018. We currently have 35 staff and we're working out of UCLAN. So we're in a city centre campus at the moment, and we're working with over 100 Lancashire SMEs. The picture that you see on the slide is our Sheffield building, Factory 2050, which specialises in digital manufacturing techniques. We work with a number of industrial partners. We've got over 100 partners and 100 industrial partners consisting of Boeing, Rolls-Royce, BAE, Airbus. You don't need to be an industrial partner to work with the AMRC Northwest. We work with any SMEs requiring help around manufacturing, engineering issues that they want to have a look at and investigate. Next slide. The new building is scheduled to be built round about, we've had a bit of a delay, Melissa was chatting to it earlier before people were joining, because of the COVID. So we reckon that our building should be up and running by late summer, early September. So that's where we sort of work in 2021. We are going to be located, I don't know if you know the site, but we're going to be located at Samlesbury, literally next door to BAE at the other side. And it is a LEP initiative to create an aerospace enterprise zone, which will offer high value manufacturing jobs for the future. And the visual that you see there is actually how the site will look going forward. Our location is literally as you drive into the site. For those that know it, it's based on the Preston Blackburn Road, and our entrance will be more or less opposite the Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's a very well-known focal point on that road, and we're going to be near there just as you drive into that location. In front of you, you'll see some visuals of how the new centre will look. It will be state-of-the-art. It'll be slightly smaller than the Factory 2050 building that you saw on that earlier visual, around 5,000 square metres in size. It'll have a number of meeting rooms, offer up to about 140 people, will be able to come there for meetings, but the majority of our workspace will be the manufacturing and workshop areas, and we'll have 3 floors, and there'll be a number of offices and project rooms based there. The workshops will be focused around technologies all applicable to 4.0, Industry 4.0 technology. Our key research themes are currently battery pack assembly. It isn't the chemistry of the cells, it's around creating the pack and how the pack's assembled. We've obviously got additive manufacturing, a massive research theme for us, everything from polymers to printing metals, i.e. titanium, etc. Robotics and automation, a main area to look at, and how we work with manufacturers around introducing this technology for them. Machining, Lancashire is awash with machining workshops. It's a key area of focus for us to work with machining SMEs. And we're also working around all aspects of digitalization of manufacturing processes. In essence, it's how everything's connected together, and it's the Internet of Things. It's how things are linking in to provide data and information from processes and machines. And then obviously we're working with the LEP around their local priorities, which change, and we're looking at what sort of priorities are coming forward and trying to adopt our offer according to those. The global pandemic has sort of thrown a bit of a spanner into our industries, and the slide you see is actually a slide that I took from some research that KPMG did, and it's around the effect of COVID on the global economy. And clearly we're seeing the effects hitting manufacturing. Rolls-Royce announcing the 9,000 job losses. Only, I think yesterday, McLaren announced 1,200 job losses. So we are starting to see manufacturers being affected by the downturn. And in fact, Make UK, in their manufacturing monitor at the 1st of May, saw that 3/4 of companies have seen a decrease in sales. That's manufacturing companies. 4/5 of companies have seen a decrease in orders, and 1 in 5 companies have seen their orders fall by more than half. So we are seeing an issue here. Now, KPMG actually came up with, in their study, they looked at technologies that will help companies move forward and try and find ways of moving out of this situation that they find themselves in. And they found that sort of the Internet of Things, that machine learning, i.e. your machines start, the more data you have, your machines can start to predict failure rates and advise you when they need maintaining sooner. Industrial robots, 3D printing, and autonomous vehicles, not particularly the cars. I was thinking more the vehicles in a factory production, where you can move items from one part of the factory to the other. So these are the technologies, and actually, coincidentally, they are they align with our research themes for the AMRC Northwest. I'm going to hand over to Ian, obviously, to go through some of the technical assist that we have on offer. But I was going to ask at this point, do you have any questions on the discussion that I've just had there? Please use your chat box and I can read them out and share them if there are any sort of questions at this point before I move on to Ian.
Thanks, Nick.
No, I think
you just let me know when you're ready. Thank you.
I think we can move on. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Nick. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ian Brooks, and I think before we go through what the individual technical assists are, it's worth just spending a few moments to talk about what the funding route is. So traditionally at the AMRC, we work on a tiered membership. That's not it for everybody. So in the Northwest, we have an ERDF funding program. So all Lancashire-based SMEs can can apply for this. It's minimum low touch point projects, you know, in the order of between 12 and 35 hours. So all of the projects that we talk about now will be based around that funding mechanism. If you're not an SME, do feel free to signpost us towards them or vice versa. And also, if you're not within the Lancashire region or not an SME, there are always other opportunities for working together and additional funding that it's worth exploring. What we have utilised the RDF Assist programme for very successfully has been as a starter, as an application to the Made Smarter initiative. So this supports all Northwest based manufacturers, 50-50 funding. I think the maximum there's 20,000, but we have conducted a number of small assists that has allowed organisations to gear up for a Made Smarter application. So moving on, how do we deliver things during this time? Normally it would be very much in person through a line walk, so an initial brainstorm as to, you know, understand what the problems and the challenges are in your organisation and how we can help there. With the current remote working method, we've also got short online questionnaires or indeed a virtual brainstorming session as well, where we can gather these key requirements. The second output for us is a tailored deliverable to your business. It's very much based on the outcomes of the requirements capture. It can be information in the form of a report, a physical demonstration, or indeed a physical thing apart, or combinations thereof. And it'll always be specific for your business. And then last of all, we'll finish off with a follow-up of approximately an hour, a virtual follow-up, where your organisation gets the chance to go over the report with us through a Q&A. So into the individual offerings now. As Nick mentioned, we have a number of different research themes at the AMRC Northwest. The first one that we'd like to go through the products, their assists, is the digital team. So firstly, we have an offer where we can help you develop your digital transformation strategy. So by utilizing the key stakeholders in your organization, we'll identify your individual requirements from a digital strategy and condense these into planned steps in a process. So the key message here is that every organization will be at different stages here, but all will be aware of the potential benefits. So this may begin, you know, very small scale with digital job cards ahead of paper-based methods, and this is something we've implemented across a number of SMEs locally. And it may culminate in the digitalization of all your manufacturing processes into one software system. So second offer from the digital team is basically a state of the nation on business management software. From our experience of working with SMEs in the region, there's real opportunity in adopting what are standard off-the-shelf business management softwares. And we can provide our independent view of what the best options are for your business, specific to your requirements. And last of all, probably the pinnacle of Industry 4 is data, how we capture it and how we use it. So this is all about data in two strands, really. So firstly, how do we capture relevant data, either through sensors that exist already, or indeed by integrating new ones? And secondly, how do we use that data to inform decisions for the business? So whether adding sensors or simply utilizing currently captured data that is lost for whatever reason, we can work with manufacturers to get the most out of what is a very precious commodity. So moving on to the additive manufacturing team, and this is my background, so I hope I can speak with some authority on these subjects. So there's a confusing amount of hype around the marketing and sales messages of metal AM. So as you can see from that infographic, there's lots of competing technologies, heavily centered in the top right there with laser powder bed fusion, you know, lots of machine OEMs and arguably the highest up the TRLs. But what are the relevant technologies for your business? What are the current ones? Which ones are higher up the TRLs? And indeed, which are the ones to watch out for? So generating this information would take an inordinate amount of effort for an organization to establish what is the baseline truth. This will take us literally days to deliver as a tailored report without any of the usual sales bias. But secondly, for AM, It's cool. There's a lot of hype around it. It gives you ultimate design freedom, but what can you actually do with it? So what are the applications of AM? And from left to right, the sublime to the ridiculous. On the left, we have an integrated actuator housing from Moog, manufactured in laser powder beds. So significant weight savings and efficiency savings, something you couldn't do with a conventional predecessor. And on the right, arguably the most notorious application, it's the 3D printing gun. But in the middle ground of that, we strongly believe there's a sell for AM in any manufacturing organization. So for us, what are those current best-in-class applications, both metals and polymers? What is the supply chain landscape like? We know there's quite a gap there when you come down from, the machine install base of the OEMs, certainly in the UK, but globally as well. And can I use AM as an enabler? So one of the best use cases of certainly polymer-based technologies is using it to manufacture jigs and fixtures to expedite the assembly and the machining process. There's another enabler here, which is a really good use case I like, is whereby people are manufacturing tool holders out of metal additive, thus allowing them to increase the material removal rate on CNC machining processes. So often misconstrued as competing technologies, it's here where metal AM has actually been used as an enabler to perform my conventional CNC processes much better, which I think is a really good use case. And also, what is the business impact of these applications? That the costs are different, the lead time requirements are different, and the consumable element is different as well. So, we can inform your business on all these things. So lastly, for additive, when we've navigated the minefield of all the different processes, and indeed we found an application either in the supply chain or individual to our organization, how do we adopt AM? So what you can see there is a very, very simplified mind map of some of the issues with adopting AM, from different processes and materials being introduced to the ominous sort of health and safety implication and the operational considerations as well. We at the AMRC have already adopted many different AM processes into our organizational structure. And we've also worked with companies to introduce AM to many different sectors, primarily those in highly regulated industries such as yours. So we're able here to inform and advise on how you go about adopting AM. So moving on to the machining group now. Most of you will be aware of the AMRC's pedigree, primarily around machining fundamentals, ultimately the science of machining. We realized in the Northwest we needed a differentiator. We didn't want to, tread on our own toes, so to speak. So what we looked at is upping the productivity of smaller machining organizations. So in short, how do we increase the material removal rate of the SME population in the region? And as Nick said, that's quite a large chunk of what we do in the Northwest. So we've looked at it in two different strands. One is from an operational perspective, and secondly is from a discrete process perspective. So operationally, we can design your manufacturing processes. We can look at your existing plant. We can optimize processes through validated, accepted statistical tools, and we can use data capture to plan programs better. As we move on to the individual machining operations themselves, we've got to focus on the characteristics of your machine tool, your selection of your tools, machining dynamics. In the Northwest, we have significant capability and are able to deploy tap testing very quickly and rapidly. So this is something of interest, certainly to us, but many SMEs as well. Optimized work holding, we talked about utilizing AM to expedite the manufacture of jigs and fixtures. Optimizing CAM strategies, integrating digital, optimizing cutting fluids, and lastly, the metrology and the quality side, so often the bottleneck in many organizations. So lastly, for our research themes, we have an automation offering. Start with one that is quite self-explanatory. There's a whole host of different visualization techniques available now. So we will work with your internal stakeholders to explore and suggest how these new techniques could implement different aspects of your business. So Is there scope there to utilize VR as a sales tool? Could you use something as a training aid? Is it something to be used in the product development life cycle? Certainly with working remotely as well, it opens these technologies up a little bit. So that would be assist number one from the automation team. Number two would be an introduction to cobotics. You can see there a quote from Dave Holmes, the manufacturing director of BAE, stating how embedded these technologies should and arguably will be. But also there's a graph there from the International Federation of Robotics, and I'm sure it doesn't surprise many, but we're quite low ranking in the world in terms of our uptake. And this is an area where we certainly see significant growth. So we can offer a number of different introductory reports on the topic to assist an organization's automation journey, from an introduction via use cases to H&S considerations and implications around COVID, and indeed any, dare I say, future pandemics that may affect our operations, and then all the way down to the business case. So what's my ROI on investing in these technologies? So lastly, and there's a bit of time to spend on this one, it's talking about discrete event simulation. So within the manufacturing world, this has traditionally been used to optimize processes and highlight potential bottlenecks. Over at our site in North Wales that we share with the Airbus Broughton facility, this factory has been completely repurposed now to adopt a layout for the ventilator challenge led by Meggitt and Airbus and others. What they did, the go-to tool here was discrete event simulation. So the key output of that was to always maintain social distancing between employees. So they varied everything from the flow of material and people within their assembly operation to where we put the hygiene and the welfare facilities as well. So this was a go-to tool to maintain social distancing. Now, whatever the output may be for a model such as this, it might be productivity, it might be social distancing, the stages are the same. So you would start with stage one in identifying the objectives, you'd move on to defining the KPIs, you'd spend the bulk of the time there planning the simulation at stage 3, and then stage 4 would be in a position to run the simulation. Now at stage 4, providing that we've done our due diligence and we've put the effort in at stage 3, it's very, very easy to throw multiple scenarios at this model. So an example again from our North Wales site is where they upped the number of employees going into the business at any one time. So they started at 5 and worked up to 10 and then to 15, and then a rota-based system just to see if that identified any other areas of concern. And again, another use case could be introducing another piece of plant to remove a bottleneck and things like this. So the important message there is when the simulation is planned and we've captured the requirements right, it's very easy to throw multiple scenarios at it. And then lastly for this, we would report the results and detail any issues and/or corrective actions. So at this point, I'm just going to hand back over to Nick. I will be available at the end for the Q&A, but Nick will just finish us off there with a case study of in more detail of our North Wales site, and then just summarise what we've talked about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ian. We've had a few more questions come in as we've been talking, so I'll take those at the end, and then we'll cover those at the very end. Okay, so I thought we'd ask you a few questions now, as well as you asking us some. What percentage of your workforce are back in work? And what barriers do you feel are in the way of your workforce returning back to work? It'd be great if you'd use the chat button and just share a few ideas. And you may have ideas of how you've overcome getting your workforce back to work that you'd like to share with the group. We've had one from Tracy about staff being concerned about safety is an issue.
I think, Nick, that leads him really well to the case study of Wales, because ultimately all of that was to ensure safety and provide confidence to employees returning to work. So it's a really valid question there.
Okay. Okay, I was just waiting just to see if there's any more. If not, we can come back to that. Just a little bit of a statistic here. The Office for National Statistics for April 2020 found that 49%, nearly 50% of adults in employment were working from home as a result of social distancing as a response from the coronavirus. So I thought I'd just throw that one in. Okay, so our colleagues at Wales, AMRC Wales, we're working on the government NHS ventilator challenge, as Ian alluded to, and that was through a consortium of Megit, AMRC, Airbus, and others. And of course, they had to take into account this new normal. Basically, it's social distancing and really reducing that human interaction wherever possible. So apologies for the detail on the slide. There is a lot of detail, and we're going to obviously circulate the slides. But what they did is they looked at a helicopter view of their facility. This was a new facility that they had to set up quickly as a response. So literally, to give you an idea, it was, how do you create 10 years worth of ventilator production in 10 weeks? And you have to adhere to this new normal. And you have staff of about just under 300. So this is what this visual shows you, all the different elements, from staff arriving at the gate to the ventilators going out at the dispatch. So it just shows you the thought process. And I thought I'd share that just in case you're working with SMEs or you're thinking about your own business, you may find it useful. If we go into some more detail, I can sort of cover off. I'll just highlight some of the things. Obviously, it's about reducing travel on public transport, how you look at staff arriving. Can they arrive in their own car to reduce that risk? You've got to think about unnecessary visitors visiting the factory. You've obviously got to develop your risk assessments and method statements. And where you see in the documentation, it refers to RAMS. That's what RAMS means. It's that risk assessment and method statement. So you have to look at that. You have to consider what forms could be put online. Do you need forms? What can go online? And obviously reception areas, you'll see this as you go to the shops, how distance markers have been put down on floors. Obviously we were doing that about a few months ago, a month or so ago, and obviously screening reception areas. And we also put in a camera, infrared camera that takes temperatures, and many hand sanitizing stations and signs. So when you come to the office and welfare facilities and the whole flow through the building, as Ian said, the discrete event simulation was critical to that. And it's modeling the flow of people through the building. And you can put in different measures on how many people, so you can 10 people, then 20, and you can see how the flows change and where your risk areas are. Obviously, pedestrian flows have to be clearly marked. Welfare areas are staggered, maybe break times are staggered, and obviously the use of the discrete event simulation. So when you come to actually the manufacturing area, we've already, Ian mentioned about cobots. So you may have a production line, and obviously you can't get this 2-meter working space. So you could consider, could collaborative robots be suited to that position? But there's also other things to consider, i.e. if you have heavy items that need lifting, so you need more than one person to lift them, so it might be 3. But the trouble is you can't get that 2-meter distance, so you have to consider, could it be automated? What else can you do in that context? And toilet areas, again, it's all about reducing that amount of touching handles and rails, etc. The visual in front shows how virtual reality was used, and Wales, when they were doing the ventilator challenge, used VR to actually create a training package so that operatives could see the process through the HoloLens and actually see how that process was to be used to construct the ventilators. But also, there's as Tracy mentioned, there's a real worry about staff returning to work. So you could actually use VR as a fly-through to let staff see what their working environment's going to be before they actually come into it. And delivery areas obviously are important to consider. At this point where both Ian and I are available for questions, we have had some questions already in. Gordon Smith asked about composites, and it was in connection to our research themes. Yes, we are considering composites. It's something that a number of manufacturers have asked us about, and I know Melissa is in conversations in connection with that, so that's certainly on our list. Andy Newby asked about cyber risk. Obviously, when we're working with companies, do we mention cyber? And yes, we do. It comes part of our work, but we'd also try and link them. There's some really good initiatives. Lancaster University have a cyber security initiative. Again, that's a funded initiative that companies can link to help them on the cyber security side. Bear with me, I'll just see what else we've had. Yeah, Martin Heyman from Manufacturing Growth Fund was sort of making the point there is a great link between the Growth Fund and their offers and Made Smarter, and it really does link us all together, because often we find we go and work with an SME, and the initial work we do structures that SME, helps create clarity around the technology, and that SME can then use that information and report to take forward a Made Smarter application. So we do try and link as best we can with the Growth Fund. And I just wanted to ask, are there any more questions? Have I missed anything off the list? No. Okay, I think we've probably come through to the questions, and it's just to say thank you for letting us share our update with you and give you some ideas how we're working with SMEs and what we can offer.
Thank you. Could we ask if there are any questions? I'm not sure if we're just not getting any, or.
Yeah. Do you want to just go back, if you want to use the chat box, if there's anything that we've flagged up that you'd like to ask? We've had a few.
Yeah.
This private ones, which I'll answer separately.
Okay.
There's a none for me, Nick. This was easy.
I was going to say, you got
I'm happy with that, by the way. So,
I mean, what we could do is, if there's any questions come in, please feel free to email me and I'll pass them on. If it's me, I'll deal with them, or if it's Ian, I'll pass them to Ian.
Okay, we've got one from Martin now.
Martin's just asked, how fast is your turnaround from initial inquiry to meeting companies? I would say as quickly as we can possibly deal with it. SMEs don't want to wait. They want people to react to what they need. So the quicker we can get to them, the better. And that's the way we would operate. So inquiry comes in, I usually ring them and arrange and get an overview, and then I'll tie in a particular technical specialist to have the meeting. Obviously now we're doing a lot of virtual meetings. We've had quite a few over the last couple of weeks with companies that are looking at new technologies and want to have a discussion.
There's no barriers to that initial discussion happening within days, is there, Nick, from that initial contact coming in? So it's really rapid.
No, and if it's something that we know there are other providers out there, other support, we would link them to it. You know, the Boost have some really great offers. So there's some really good support there for businesses. So, you know, we try and work with a company to support and then help and refer as well.
Also, what we've found is with regards to the type of assists that are coming to us from SMEs, they're very diverse. So we're finding that not one of our teams is actually overloaded more than another. So we can actually respond quite quickly because, you know, it's not like additive is the most popular or whatever it might be. So it's very, very rounded in terms of the makeup of our teams. And we can be quite agile in terms of sort of shifting team members from one team to another as well. So we try and respond as quickly as possible.
Well, that's really good. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you to everyone at AMRC Northwest. Ian, do you have Glenn's NATEP slides?
Yes, I do. I'll skip on now.
If we can skip onto that. And Glenn, over to you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that, Sharon. So yeah, I'm just going to give an update on the NATEP programme, so the National Aerospace Technology Exploitation Programme. I think it kind of moves on neatly from what Ian and Nick have been talking about in terms of the AMRC and particularly some of the research areas, because some of the projects we see within NATEP, some of those areas like additive manufacturing, automation, that kind of thing. So I think it's a nice fit. So yeah, just in terms of the programme itself, NATEP originally came out of so the UK Aerospace Industrial Strategy. And as a result of that, the Aerospace Growth Partnership, which came out of that, developed the programme, focusing on small and medium-sized businesses to help them to develop their own innovative technologies and increase their ability to win new business with high-tier companies. So first phase of NATEP started back in 2013 and was a 4-year programme. And then NATEP since 2017 has actually fallen under the wing of the Aerospace Technology Institute. And that's where the funding has been coming from. So if we can move on to the next slide, that's great. So the programme is a £10 million programme with £10 million worth of grant funding over 4 calls, which started back in autumn 2019. The maximum amount of funding per project to cover all partners is £150,000, and that's at a 50% funding ratio. So that'd be the total cost of the project around £300,000 with £150,000 worth of funding. And that, you know, typically you could have anything. There must be 2 partners on a project, but there can be up to 4. Each project must have a maximum duration of 18 months. And the programme is really focused around that funding support that's provided to each project. Collaboration, that's a key part of it, and also mentoring. So there's a technology manager assigned to each project to help them in the initial stages to win the funding, and also when they're actually delivering the project. Okay, if we can, thank you. Move on to the next one. So there's a bit more information about the criteria for any potential project. So as I mentioned, the lead company must be a small or medium-sized enterprise. Other companies can be involved, but they wouldn't be able to be the lead organisation. They must have, so the project must have a civil aerospace application, so that's key. So projects can have a military aerospace application, but there also has to be that civil aerospace application sit with under the NATEP umbrella. As I mentioned, there's got to be a collaboration of at least 2 organisations. So that could be an SME and another SME, or an SME and such as AMRC, or you know, a higher education institution as well. And projects must show the clear benefit technically, and also there must be to show what it'll do in terms of creation or safeguarding of jobs during the project, and obviously post-project, where where if it's been successful, you'd expect to see some level of job creation there. So in terms of the type of projects that sit underneath NATEP, so fundamental research is not suitable. That's typically what you might see more in an academic institution, but usually it's within TRL 4 to 7, so it's something that's beyond a feasibility study. So there'll be a level of testing or demonstration within the project, but equally it's not too close to commercialisation. because then you might get into state aid issues at that point. So any technology developed should also be in line with the latest ATI strategy. And the NATEP website has some more details on that. It should be in the footer below, but it's just natep.org.uk. Okay, move on to the next slide. Thank you. So just a brief summary of the process in terms of the first stage is an outline application into the program. So there's currently a call live at the moment for outline applications. Now the deadline for that is the end of this month, so it's quite soon. What I would say is the outline application is the first stage of the process, so it's what we say is the foot in the door type stage. So even if it's not fully formed at this stage, I would still look at trying to get something in to drop into the process. That application would then be reviewed by an industry panel. So it includes people who've been in the industry for a number of years from different organisations, representatives for Safran, BAE, Rolls-Royce, and some other organisations as well, academia and Catapults on that panel. There's then feedback on the outline application. Next stage is the full proposal, which again is reviewed by that industry panel. And then the next stage will be to present to that industry panel on the project. So, it's almost like a Dragon's Den type session. So it can, what the advantages of the proposal, and a big part of that is the feedback on how to improve the proposal. The final stage really is to go into the online system. So Innovate UK manage, monitor applications and projects on behalf of ATI within NATEP. So there does have to be that, that online application. And, organisations can actually go straight to that online application, but we would encourage organisations to take advantage of the support and mentoring that's available prior to that stage to, to help improve any applications. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, thank you. So this is just an overview of each of the different calls and the timescales involved. So you'll see that the third row down, autumn call 2020. The deadline for the outline proposals for this call is the 31st of May. The next stage is then full proposal stage. So we would need those applications in by the 11th of September with a proposal presentation to the industry panel in October, and then the deadline onto the Innovate system in November, with the plan to notification successful project award by January next year. There's also another call which opens for outline applications on the 13th of November as well, if the 31st of May is too tight. Okay, so I think just onto the last slide now. So if anybody's interested in, potentially putting a proposal together or finding out more about the programme and that process, then, feel free to contact me. My details are there on the screen. And, if there's any questions, just let me know.
Thanks, Glenn. We just have a question for you from Martin Hyman, and he wants to know if you can provide some examples of successful recent NATEP projects.
Yes, so one I do know of with an organisation that was working on the programme called Deny, which was about detecting rogue UAVs, if you will, through a system that they developed using a combination of software to go with digital cameras. So they've got a number of systems that they supply to airports and also ships at the moment. So they've developed it into a product called Sky Patriot off the back of the NATEP program. They did around, it was completed about 3 years ago. So they've managed to successfully commercialise that. There's been other examples, but I think that's the most noteworthy one. So it's just a case of taking the momentum of the project, and there has to be around a 6-month gap to commercialisation for state aid reasons. But we have seen a number of examples of that happening. And it also, obviously, it helps to build collaborative relationships with other companies and the end user. So there does need to be that end user involvement to show the exploitation. So that would be the one I would mention in terms of a successful project.
Okay, thanks, Glenn.
Okay.
So I'll just leave Glenn's details up there for a minute. However, if you go to the NWAA website, you will find his details and telephone number should you need it at a later stage. If anyone else has any more comments or questions, please speak now. Okay, that was good. Thank you very much. Thank you once again to AMRC Northwest. And please contact us if you'd like to do a further webinar. Melissa, we'd be most keen to hear from you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sharon.
everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Bye for now.
you. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.